All right. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, what's up, everybody? You're watching another episode of Live with Wolfman. I'm your host, Jacob Wolfman, and this is a show about all the things that I'm interested in, all the things that I'm interested in, and all the things that you're interested in. Today on the show, we have the one, the only, Mr. Jackson Rudolph. He'll be joining us in just a quick second. But first of all, I want to say again, real quickly, thank you every time you guys tune in and you send me those messages and you compliment the show or you give me critique or you reach out to me. You guys are the reason that I do this show. You keep me super motivated to do this. And I have some plans moving forward with this show. The thing is that I keep bringing on these really awesome guests, and I'm doing it through a format called Facebook Live. And the problem with Facebook Live is that it's kind of hard to watch previous episodes. They're kind of hard to find in the first place, which is why I created the Facebook group Live with Wolfman, so you could go through and kind of scroll through and find it. But then, just because of the format of it, the only way to watch it is you have to, have it present right in front of you. And I think that this show would work really good as a podcast, to be quite honest with you. Just being able to tune in and you go to a workout, you go on a walk or something, and being able just to listen to the audio version of this. So I'm looking at leveling up this show in the future to have it also become a podcast that you can download. If you guys are all about that, give me some reactions. I would assume you guys are all about that because I'm all about it, and it's an easy thing. It's an easy decision to make. Executing that is a little bit more of a challenge. I've been researching it over the past couple days, and it requires a little bit more effort. I got to spend a little bit of money and stuff, and so far I've spent $0 on this show, which is the way I like it. But I've spent a lot of time on it, obviously. So just trying to figure out ways to level up the show to get it as a podcast so you guys can go back and listen to this stuff, because not everybody can tune in the middle of the afternoon or morning if you're on the Pacific Coast. It's kind of a weird time to do the show, and I know a lot of you guys like the replays, and I know a lot of you like being able to have it as a podcast. So I'm just working on that, just an FYI for you. So that's the next level up on the show. That being said, it's time to start. It's time to introduce my guest. Please, everybody, give a ton of floating thumbs ups and a ton of hearts and a ton of wows and every Facebook reaction you possibly can give for Mr. Jackson Rudolph. Wow! Jackson Rudolph, you are live, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. What's up, everybody? It's an honor to be here. When Jacob gave me the text message and he was like, "Yo, you want to be on the show?" I tuned into the last few episodes. I think I started at the Mike Welch episode. Because I heard there was a little bit of talking about me going on in there. I wanted to check it out. But I think the show's awesome, and I'm happy to be here.
Now, Jackson, just an FYI, there's been a lot of talk of you on the show. We've brought you up quite a number of times. Every time I talk about who are the greatest competitors, who inspires you the most, your name is always in the mix. So for the one person that's in my chat today that doesn't know who you are, can you briefly just kind of explain who you are?
So, as we've gone over, my name is Jackson Rudolph. I'm a member of Team Paul Mitchell Karate and have been a member since 2012. I compete internationally as well as on the NASCA circuit. I love what I do. I use the knowledge that I've gained over my years of competing to teach seminars worldwide. I would describe myself as passionate. Every time I go on the mat, I try to leave every ounce of energy and every ounce of intensity that I have on the mat. So I care about what I do. I'm passionate about my craft, and that's me.
That's Jackson. He understated it while being pretty accurate about what he's saying. Jackson is a world-class competitor, a world-class instructor. Yesterday we had Dan Perez on the show, and if Dan Perez is the professor of tricking, Jackson is the professor of the bow staff. He is able to teach his craft in such a scientific and structured way, very eloquently. He's great. I think he does more seminars than just about any other person I know. Maybe Bill Superfoot Wallace has you beat, but only because of time. But Jackson is always traveling the country. He's either competing on the weekends, or he's at a school teaching seminars, or I don't know, he's teaching Chuck Norris, or he's doing 2 seminars in 2 different states on one weekend. Back when we had Hyper Pro Camp back in July, and he was a rock star. He had a seminar in Las Vegas with some sort of Chuck Norris event, right? Mm-hmm. And then he flew into Huntington Beach, taught a seminar in California, hopped back on a plane, flew back because he had another thing to do in Vegas. So this guy is a rock star. So it's really awesome to have Jackson on the show. Today, Jackson, we got a couple topics that we're going to kind of go over and just kind of have fun and talk about martial arts, particularly bow staff, because that's what you're known for. If you guys in the chat, you have any questions you want to ask Jackson, just lay them out there. We'll be answering questions as they pop up in the live feed. Again, this is a participation show, so the more you guys participate, the more engaging and more fun this show is. So the first topic I wanted to talk about is I wanted to go into the sands of time. I wanted to talk a little bit about history. Now, one thing that I don't think everybody quite understands about Jackson is that yesterday, again, I compare you a lot. There's a lot of correlation between you and Dan Perez, and he was on the show yesterday. Dan Perez is he's the encyclopedia of tricking, and Jackson Rudolph is an encyclopedia of sport karate. This guy has stats and statistics and knowledge that's so it's really impressive. Sometimes I chat with them and I'm like, okay, I didn't know you know a heck of a lot about the sport. It's really amazing how deep it goes. So I want to talk a little bit about the history, particularly the history of the bow staff, because I feel like when you started winning, you really shook up how people compete with bow staffs in a big way. So I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on the evolution of it, where you are today, and how the sport has been. Your thoughts on that? It's kind of open-ended, but
right. I think the most effective way to talk about history from my perspective and from the scope of bow staff in general is to start with lineage. So if you trace my instructional lineage all the way back, you get to Mike Bernardo. Mike Bernardo, he's a Canadian competitor. He was widely considered the father of modern bow staff. If you go back, and I think we've got one of the links up to Mike Bernardo's videos, maybe that'll be coming to you guys soon.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's up right now. World-class competitor, one of the best to ever do it. And he was kind of the first person to take a bow staff form and start to really entertain with it. You know, he started doing one-handed figure eights, spinning, holding the bow at the bottom, not just doing baseball swings with it, but doing all types of other manipulations from the lower end of the bow. So as you see the video, it's a very different style from what we do today. But without this in the beginning, we wouldn't have what we do today. The generation shift is very extreme with martial arts. It moves very quickly. But I think it's very important that especially some of the kids that are watching this show that previously would not know who Mike Bernardo is, it's very important that you see something like this and just look at the way that he entertained, look at the intensity. There's so many intangibles about Bernardo's performances that were so important to the development of all of sport karate, not just bow staff or just weapons or anything like that. Mike Bernardo was instrumental to the progression of the entire sport. So you go on from that. Mike Bernardo also trained Casey Marks, now known as Casey Nash, probably one of the top 3 female competitors of all time, on that list with my own coach, Lauren Carney. So the Casey Marks, Lauren Carney generation kind of meshed together into one. So Casey learned from Mike Bernardo, and then Lauren learned from Casey. And then Lauren is whose wing I fall under. So I started working with Lauren when I was, I guess, 8 years old, maybe 9. And, she's the one who really taught me how to compete because I knew how to hold my bow. I knew my basics. But I hadn't really learned how to compete. I hadn't learned how to make it a performance. And so Lauren was the one who kind of showed me how to make it that, right? And if you watch Lauren's form, we see stark contrast with Bernardo. It's a very different style. The speed is increased, and as you watch, she goes into this opening combo, you're going to see a lot more manipulation. The strikes are faster. There's more manipulation going on, switching the bow between hands, a lot more creativity overall. And that's because of the generation shift. But you can still see the influences, like the basics, the way that she is competing, the intensity that she uses, the way she entertains. It's those things, it's those intangibles that are passed down from generation to generation. And you see it come down all the way from Bernardo to Casey to Lauren. And now in my performances, it's something that I try to instill. I'm not going to say that I look anything like Mike Bernardo when he competes, or Casey or Lauren. I think that we all look very different. I think the most similar out of any of us would be Casey and Lauren because their generations were so close. But we're all very unique competitors, and we all come from the same lineage. And what's so valuable about that is to see how that progression changes over time. And I think that a lot of competitors nowadays get caught up in, well, this is the now and this is what everybody's doing, so this is the only thing I need to focus on. And that's just not true, because everything that we're doing today is based off of the people that laid the ground for us. Your Mike Bernardos, your Mike Chats, your John Valeras, all of those guys who, in the 80s and 90s were tearing up the circuit. That's what inspires the kind of stuff that we do now.
So you guys, we're all watching your performance from the U.S. Open this last July, and I want to challenge you a little bit here on the show today. I already know the answer, so I'm just asking it from, because other people say this. I hear this stuff all the time, especially in your earlier years. Today, I think, or maybe I'm just in a different bubble, but in your earlier years, people would kind of they give you a hard time, whether to your face or to your back, when they go, "Oh, Jackson, he just does tricks. That's the only reason he wins is because he throws the bow staff in the air and he just tosses it, and he's really good at tricks. He doesn't know how to actually use a bow staff." And I already know what your answer is on this. So I kind of want you to explain what you have to say to people that say that, and kind of talk about. Well, I'll just leave it open. I won't tell you what to talk about. But what do you say to people that tell you all you do is you just do the tricks?
I want to start off with kind of where I started on my bow staff journey. When I first started doing bow, I spent 3 months just trying to get the basics down. The original instructor who taught me how to do bow staff would not let me even do a figure eight or a butterfly spin, the most basic of bow staff tricks, until I had been doing the basics for 3 months and showed that I had an understanding of the concept of the basics. So that solid foundation was always there. And if you look at my forms today, you see this balance. And a lot of people would argue that balance. But when I make up a new form, I break it down, and I always try to make sure that I have an equal ratio of strikes to tricks. For every trick, there is a strike, and typically in forms, there's actually more strikes than there are tricks. And then you look at the amount of time used doing one thing or the other, and it's the simple fact that when you throw the bow in the air, it takes longer for that technique to be completed than it does for a forward strike to be completed. And so it may appear to some people that there's more tricks going on than there are striking. But in reality, the number of combos is equal. There's the same number of strike combos and the same number of trick combos in every form that I create. And then people say, okay, well, to silence the critics, why don't you do just more strikes? Why don't you take out some of the tricks? And it's kind of the nature of the sport now. It's like, if I were to take out too many tricks, then I wouldn't have the difficulty to be competitive. So I think it's important to show good understanding of your basics. I think it's important to show, a high level of development of those basic skills in your traditional martial arts techniques. But in order to be competitive in today's competition scene, you've got to be able to have the difficulty. And I have found that the best way to balance that is through that formula that I use. For every trick combo that I have a strike combo that goes with it. And it's generally pretty easy when you watch the form, and you just watch it through once thinking about that. You can see there's the strike combo, there's the following trick combo, there's the strike combo, there's the following trick combo. And that's always something that I try to achieve. And I try to instill it in my students too, because, first and foremost, the basics are what's most important. The basics are what you're being judged on. You wow the crowds and you get on ESPN and you get viral videos with all the tricks. But at the end of the day, what wins a karate tournament is going to be your martial arts technique.
Yep. So I think, and it might be second nature to you at this point, but I think it's worth reiterating a key philosophy of how you think about your forms that makes it. It's really interesting. You broke it down. What you said is into a formula, and I've talked about you quite a number of times on the show, believe it or not, because I think you're awesome. But you, like I said, you calculate. You're like, I have this many strikes, so I have this many tricks, and so you're very scientific about the formula of your form to ensure that it's not just toss, trick, but you are very calculated and very balanced with it. And I think that it definitely goes amiss because, especially for the new person that are not all right, let's not judge anybody, but somebody watching your form, they will get mesmerized by the flash, the tricks and stuff, but the expression flash is trash without the basics, right? They forget that when you are striking, you're hitting hard. I'm going to pull up a video right now. I believe it was Amerikick this year. You know,
pulling up one of the broken bow videos.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on.
It happened at Amerikick, but I don't think
it's on YouTube.
I know there's a link to it on my Facebook page.
I'll have to. Yeah.
Actually, there is a YouTube link of another broken bow form. If
sure,
you wanted
sure.
To...
Yeah, pull it up. Tell me which one it is.
Jackson Rudolph Twin Towers Classic 2011.
How often do you break a bow?
I would say I go through a bow every month or two.
Wow.
They're traditional or creative. I actually break more creative bows than I break traditional bows. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I train 2 different creative bow forms and 1 traditional bow form. So the creative bow is getting more work put into it because there's 2 forms as opposed to 1. But yeah, that's another thing that a lot of people don't see is that I break, creative bows doing strikes in creative bow forms. And there's also your number of people that will say, oh, well, if you break a bow, well, you're not holding it correctly. It's not necessarily true. If you break your bow and it breaks off in between your 2 hands, that typically means you were in thirds and the bow just broke from the pressure. When your bow breaks at either end, that's when your hands were too close together, too much pressure goes to the bottom end of the bow, and then one of the ends will snap off. But typically, if you break your bow in the middle, that generally indicates a clean break, as in the strike was just too hard for the wood to handle.
Now, do you educate the judges? You're like, hey, look where I broke it. See, it was good stuff.
Actually, under NASCAR rules, you're disqualified if your bow breaks.
I know, but you got to tell them anyhow. See, I did it right. I broke it the right way.
Yeah, so on this particular form, I believe that it breaks on a sweep in this opening strike combo. Once I get going here, this is back in the time of 5-minute long intros.
This is Baby Jackson here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is
6 years ago.
Oh, right there on that sweep is where it breaks. I do one more strike and then realize it's not actually.
But you keep going. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then I just kind of keep going. I make something work.
Why not? I traveled all this way. I'm gonna put on a show. It's awesome. I love it. You did the same thing at Amerikick. It was a little more intense. You were so fired up at Amerikick earlier this year. I wish I could play the video. We've actually showed it on the show before. I just wanted to share that. But cool. So we talked about a little bit about the history of the bow staff. We talked about kind of your inspirations. Basically, it's your lineage. You start with Mike Bernardo, moved up to Casey Marks, learned Kearney, and now I wanted to show you have a couple more people that inspire you. So I thought we would just give them a little bit of a little airtime on the show today. I'm just going to play them up. The first one is Billy Ledger, and to be honest, I never.
This is one of my favorite forms. This is one of my favorite forms of all time.
I've never heard of him until you shared it last night, and I was kind of going through this.
And that's the problem. A lot of people haven't heard of him. I remember watching him when I was little. I was actually at this night show at Pan Am's. He wasn't super consistent, but it was because he always went for the hardest stuff. And you'll see in this video, he's doing things, I believe this was 2007. No, it couldn't have been. It had to have been maybe 2009. Anyway.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is he's doing stuff that's way beyond his time. Like, he just caught his bow with his forearm. Nobody was doing that back then. Starts right away with an inverted catch coming out of a 360. That was unprecedented for that time.
Yeah.
He's got good lines on most of these strikes. His basics were certainly there.
Yeah.
You see ski there. That's the
Ooh,
old school straight up uniforms. The
yeah.
neck manipulation there is unreal for that time period.
Mhm.
And this is one of the forms that inspired a lot of my tricks. Right here, you're going to get to see one.
Ooh,
1-2. That throw from behind the back inspired a lot of those moves that I do in my form where the bow's getting flicked behind my back very quickly. Anything where I throw it out from behind my back, it kind of started with that move. In fact, I've even got one move titled the Kill Bill because I kind of took that move and edited it a little bit, and his name was Billy. And so the best name for the move that I could come up with was a Kill Bill. So Billy Ledger, a name that many people haven't heard, but in my opinion, very influential to the development of bow staff tricks.
awesome. You brought up another little interesting thing about you. You're constantly creating new tricks all the time that have never been done before. So you're definitely leading the way in innovation. And as a result of that, you come up with names because you have to give names to these tricks. Can you just talk about some of the names, because you got crazy ones. You got the Orbiter, you got the Chris Angel, right. You got the Galaxy. I don't even know, Supernova or something. Superman.
Yeah. The nomenclature does get pretty complex, but at the same time, it's also pretty organized. So basically, any move in which the bow is being thrown from behind my back is what I call a zero gravity variation. And from that zero gravity, you kind of get all these other space-themed names. So Orbiter is a throw in which the bow goes from behind my back, it goes all the way around my body, and I catch on the other side, right? So the bow is orbiting around my body. That's an idea that I got back in 2009 and didn't do it in competition until I believe 2012 or 13. So that was a move that was in development for a long time. And then on top of that, you've got, XYZ other moves, Asteroid Belt, Interstellar. So there's a lot of space-themed move names. I also stole a little bit of naming convention from tricking. Box cutter is a bow staff term as well. It's a horizontal throw that I didn't make up the name box cutter for that move.
Mm-hmm.
But box cutter is a tricky term as well. But more directly, some terms are just directly derived from tricking. Like when we do a single spin catch, us bow staffers don't typically call it a single spin catch. We call it a 360. When we spin twice, we call it a 720, 1080, etc. With body rolls, like we have tricking, you can do a tornado kick or you can do a tornado kick hyper, which is a 540. With neck rolls in bow staff, you can do a neck roll or you can do a hyper neck roll. A hyper neck roll is when your chin ducks down to your chest, the bow does an extra half rotation over the back of your head, and you catch. So it's the same type of naming convention, an extra half rotation of a 540 kick from a tornado kick landing on your kicking leg is a hyper, whereas an extra half rotation of the bow catching with your opposite hand on a neck roll is a hyper neck roll. And that's another kind of naming convention that I developed myself primarily, because other people didn't have
Somebody's
names.
Somebody's got to name it, yeah.
Right.
You got to start. You got to start somewhere.
And it's a lot more effective to teach that way too, because when you get advanced students that are trying to learn these advanced level tricks, you can't just say do trick thing number 2, and that it's hard for them to retain that. But when you have names for it and you're like, oh, do an orbiter, then they know right away. They know exactly what you're talking about.
So I'm going to give you a little plug right here. Anybody that's interested in learning more of Jackson's tricks, you go on the Hyper Training Lab right now. He's got all of these tricks that he's invented. I believe he invented all of these, except for spinning release, I guess. But
not all of them were invented.
Box cutter, I guess, wasn't. But many of them were. But in either case, if you want to learn bow staff tricks, there is actually a module right in the Hyper Training Lab app, and you can just go through, and Jackson will teach all of these tricks and all of this language. I think we could have a whole conversation, a whole episode breaking down the language itself of your tricks. But I think it's super fascinating and worth, give a little plug to Jackson. Go download his kit. He's also got
Thank you.
He's also got forms on here. You can learn a regular form, a pro level form. So he's got a lot of stuff on there, and all kinds of strikes. Jackson he's got a ton of content. Never get bored of Jackson. All right, I want to give another plug to another competitor that inspired you. Mm-hmm. This competitor happens to be a very tall guy, and he happens to use a stick. His name is Nate Andre. Let's check him out. Tell me about this guy.
Nate Andre, he was another huge inspiration of mine, right up there with Billy Ledger. Ironically enough, this is also at the Pan American Internationals. And I would say personally, I think Nate was a little bit more of an influence on me than Billy was, because I knew Nate.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Nate excuse me, some water.
Get some
I
water.
talked to Nate very regularly when I was coming up. And in this form, you're going to see one of the moves that contributed to some of my better forms earlier in my career. I'd say probably around 2010, 2011. It was a staple move in my form. It's called a fantail raise up. I think it's coming towards the end of this performance. You can already see Nate had a lot of style in his forms, a lot of unconventional movements, things that made Nate Nate.
Yeah.
Stuff that nobody else could pull off quite like he did. And it's part of what made him so fun to watch. They call him Nate Showtime Andre, because it was a show watching him. And I think right here, there's the fantail raise up. And you notice that that's a technique that I used in 2010, 2011. And there's actually a pretty good backstory to that move. So at 2010 U.S. Open, that was the first U.S. Open title that I ever won. And I think that one of the moves that contributed to being able to win that title was that fantail raise up. And it was a move that going into the weekend, I didn't know how to do.
Oh, really?
I knew how to do the palm spin behind my back, the fantail, but I did not know how to raise it up like that. And so Nate was at U.S. Open. I saw him, warming up. And on Saturday afternoon, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, man, can you teach me that move? Like, I've seen you do it. I think it's an awesome move. Can you teach me?"
Mm-hmm.
And, Nate said, absolutely. He taught me the move, and he said, why don't you go and use it tonight? And so I did, and the rest is history. So
awesome.
Nate was very influential. A lot of the body rolls that we see in modern competition, he and Ross Levine collaborated on a ton of those body rolls. But yeah, he's a body roll mastermind. He's a manipulation mastermind. I highly recommend Nate and Ross's sync form, Tall Guys with Sticks.
Yeah. Let's play that right now.
Historic, revolutionary sync form. The creativity was unreal.
It was a lot of fun. I was there. I was on the side of the stage watching this one. I remember this.
I was 5 years old when this form happened.
It's the baby. I think I'm one of the blurry heads back here. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize or remember or have any idea that Ross Levine used to compete with Bo. He's not just a fighter.
Oh yeah, he won a diamond ring with Bo.
I know, it's crazy. People don't remember that stuff. It seems to be a lot of fighters, once you start getting good at fighting, you're known as a fighter, and then people forget that you got the whole package. So one thing I think that's interesting about you and Nate is that you guys win with the weapon. A lot of competitors, and I'm not disrespecting anyone, but a lot of competitors will implement a lot of other flips and tricks and stuff that isn't really utilizing the weapon in order to level up their form. But that's not your style. That's not what you do. You go out there and you use the weapons division to showcase your mastery of your weapon. I just wanted to make note of that because I think it's important for the division itself is that we remember that it is a weapons division, but it does get lost sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that I kind of grew up, not with that intention, but I always kind of grew up being that guy. My first divisional wins were with traditional. My first division win that I ever won was at AKA Grand Nationals, and it was a traditional weapons form. The first time I made stage was at Diamond Nationals back in 2008 for a traditional empty hand form. And then I didn't make stage and win with creative CMX weapons until after that. And so it was always, kind of a part of my style to focus on the weapon and to try to upgrade the difficulty with the weapon. And you see in the development of some of my early trick combos, a lot of that I took inspiration from tricking. I started competing just about when the tricking revolution on the circuit was taking place. And I noticed that people that were placing higher than me, they were doing these long tricking combos that were going all the way across the mat. And up until that point, bow forms typically, either just went straight forward or maybe used a little bit of angles, but there really wasn't much movement around the mat. And so I kind of copied that idea. I said, what if I can take my bow staff tricks? What if I can take my weapon specialty? And what if I can apply the movement that trickers do in their forms? And what if I can
Interesting.
use the entire mat for a bow staff tricking combo as opposed to a trick tricking combo? I was never someone that got into tricking.
Hmm.
I don't dislike it. I enjoy watching tricking. I enjoy watching battles. I enjoy, tricking events. I enjoy watching musical forms that have tricking in them. But me personally, it was just never something that I enjoyed doing.
Sure, and you don't
The
need to. I mean, you shouldn't have to be able to trick to be able to be a top competitor. So, I want to show another influence that you have, or that you're inspired by. His name's Joe Greenhall. So let's take a look at him.
so,
Tell me about this guy.
Joey Greenhall, son of Joe Greenhall. For those of you that ordered G-Force weapons, Joe Greenhall's the one that's putting all those together. This is his son. Joey, another huge inspiration of mine, more so for the creativity.
Mm-hmm.
The creativity, if you watch the nature of some of Joey's striking already in this form, the striking it's from different angles, there's different hand manipulation, there's a lot of different little intricacies going on in Joey's forms that I feel like, honestly, a lot of times he didn't get much credit for, and I feel like he deserved more credit for. Joey was a former member of Team Paul Mitchell. Again, primarily known as a fighter, but I always loved his bow staff forms. The creativity, the difficulty. We've seen some behind the back throws in this. We've seen a wide variety of different types of manipulations. You see the passion that he brought to his forms. Joey was always a guy that went out there, gave 110%. You could always tell that he was having fun when he was doing it. And again, just look at some of the striking that you guys are seeing right now. That's stuff that only Joey could pull off. He was striking at different angles. He was unconventional, but it worked because it was creative. It was entertaining, and that's the reason that Joey is a huge inspiration to anybody today that should be doing bow staff.
So I'm gonna pop up one more guest, or not guest. Well, he was a guest. I'm gonna pop up one more video. This one's gonna be Mike Welch. I had him on the show the other day, which you mentioned earlier. And we were talking about during Mike's era of competition. Now, this is just a little tiny tournament. It happens in Wisconsin, but for whatever reason, this video went viral. So we're going to play his viral video. During his era of competition, it seemed like everybody had their own way of using the bow. Like Casey and Lauren had a very similar style, but Mike moved a very different way. Nate moved a very different way. Joe Greenhall moved a very different way. I think today, I don't want to give you all the credit in the world, but you get a lot of the credit. A lot of people move like you today, or a very similar style. I think it probably because they're inspired by you, and you probably give them private lessons and train them. But it's a different era today. I think.
Right.
I just wanted to kind of bring that topic up. I want to see if you had any thoughts on that.
An important note that I want to make is that I train, I would say, the majority of the consistently successful bow staff practitioners in the junior division. Even if you go all the way up to the Paul Mitchell guys like Jake Presley and Aiden Considine, those are guys at the top of their game, and they're guys that I worked with before. I don't claim rights to either of those competitors.
Sure.
But I did help them when they were younger, and they're very different competitors. If you watch Jake's bow form or you watch Aiden's bow form, it's two completely different styles of bow. So now let's take that same type of idea and let's look at people that are directly my students that I've kind of taken, whether they were in their development when I met them or whether they really weren't very good at all when I met them, and then kind of worked them up to being top-level NASCA competitors. For example, look at like the top 3 bow staff guys or some of the top 3 bow staff guys in 13 and under. You've got Mason Bumba, you've got Aiden Kennedy, you've got Esteban Tremblay. And all 3 of those guys are guys that I train, and they're all very unique in their style. They're all dynamically different in their style. Do they use some of the concepts, the flow, the trick combos that I've tried to instill? Absolutely. But they all have very different forms. They all have very different tricks, and they all have their own style. And that's something that I tell every student that I work with. I'm like, I'm going to give you these tools. I'm going to give you these tricks because these are the tricks that you want to learn. But I don't want you to take what I teach you today and just put that directly into your form. What I want you to do is I want you to take those tools that you learn, be creative with it, and find new ways to do the things that I've been doing. Because at the end of the day, when I train someone, my goal is not to make them as good as me. My goal is to make them better than I am. Because if my students don't become better than me, the sport doesn't progress. I hope that everybody in the 1300 division right now grows up and becomes better than Jackson Rudolph ever was. Because that's how our sport continues to move forward. And if you go out and you teach everybody the same form, then nobody's going to be creative and nothing's going to go anywhere. So every form that I teach students, I make it up on the spot so that it's a unique form. It's a form that only that particular student has, and it caters to their strengths and their weaknesses. And so, I do think that you see a lot of similarities in a lot of the kids' forms. I think that like pretty much everybody now has like a 720 spin catch. That's become almost as staple of a move in bow staff forms as a pop front kick or a flash kick in musical forms. So you see some of these common themes, and I have mixed feelings about those common themes. I feel like it's important that everybody's form has certain things that everybody does so that you can distinguish, okay, this person's was better than this. But at the same time, I value creativity a lot. So I think that creativity is essential to progress. So do I think that everyone needs a 720 catch in their bow form? No. But if it's what the judges are giving credit to, and if you don't do one but instead do something more difficult, but the judges still go with what they know and what is consistently known as the 720, then maybe it's important to have the 720 in the form. So I think it's a combination of kids always trying to cater to what the judges want, and they're going to go with what's winning. And if they see my stuff winning on stage in the adults, then the basic logic is that it'll win in the juniors as well.
Right.
But if you really kind of dissect the juniors, it's not the kids that take exactly what the adults do and do that. It's the kids that take what the adults do and put their own spin on it. And we can apply that to other weapons as well. I saw a runoff form at Diamond Nationals that I thought was incredible. Connor Chastain, Infinity Kid, does commas. You see a lot of influence there. You see some Cole Presley influence in there, but it wasn't like he just took Cole Presley's form and just did Cole's comma form.
Right.
He made it his own routine. And I think that's what's important. I mentioned Jake and Aiden, they do that as well. Danny Etkin, he takes nunchucks and he does his own style of nunchucks. He doesn't just do exactly what Matt always did. Can you see Matt's influences? Absolutely.
Sure.
But it's identifiably Danny's form. And I think in that 1300 division, what's going to be the difference between the kids that grow up to be great and the kids that grow up to be good are going to be the kids that can kind of show that extra aspect of creativity and take it to the next level.
Now, you said so much there that I wanted to commentate on, but I was going to let you finish. One of the things that we talk about on the show all the time is this concept of being creative and balancing it with the act of needing to win. I have a basic philosophy on this show that don't hate the player, hate the game. When a competitor goes out there, you got to do what you got to do to get the win. I mean, it's a sport, it's a competition. So yes, absolutely. In some regard, you got to do what the judges are going to give you credit for. But then there is this other side of the coin of like, you have to be willing to take a little bit of risk, right? You have to be willing to stretch yourself and define yourself and create something new and original. Because if you're just imitating whatever's in the top, then the best you can do is be them. You have to find your own thing. You have to work around, like find inspiration and grow from it. So it's a good discussion all around. No answers here. It's just it's more like just a philosophical conversation. So I wanted to jump back here. We're in the present. We're talking a little about the future. Let's jump back to the past. I wanted to bring up this Mike Welch video because I paused it. So let's watch a little Welch action. Tell me the reason we're watching this video.
This is one of the first extreme bow staff forms that I watched on YouTube when I started learning how to do creative bow. If you go on YouTube, this video is actually titled Karate Bow Extreme, which isn't the best. It's not the best grammatical title, but it works for getting the video to go viral, and that's exactly what it is. If you search extreme bow, you get Mike Welch. And the combo that he just did was unprecedented. Yes. A, for this being just some regional tournament, and B, for the time period. Right?
Yep.
So the fact that he just went from, this fast figure eight manipulation into, I believe it was a raise, and then later in the combo, he went into a gainer from the bow staff tricks. the mixing together of bow strap tricks. You see him hit an awesome horse stance at the end there. You also don't see much
those
horse
things.
stance. Yeah. Yeah, so it's like you don't see those in creative weapons anymore. I used to have one of those when I was 9 years old in my form. So it's like, again, another example of the generation shift. But look at this. He goes directly from the fast figure eight manipulation called a windmill into the tricking, does the around the leg pass into the gainer. For that time period, that was unreal. People weren't mixing together, tricking and bow strap tricks like that. And honestly, I think it's the next wave. The next wave of great competitors is going to be the competitors that can't just do trick combos, can't just do bow trick combos, but can mix them together very effectively. And we start to see a ton of that in the junior divisions right now.
Yes.
And I think it's awesome.
Yeah. You got a couple of the people that you mentioned already on the show that are frightening as far as what's happening in the future. Aiden Kennedy comes to mind right away. Mr., I'm going to take private lessons from Jackson on how to be the best I could possibly be at the bow staff. He's won weapons trick battles with the bow staff, but he's also a master of tricking. And he's able to combine all of these elements together. Scary stuff. And he's not the only one. There's quite a number of them. I mean, Abe Constantine, another guy who tricks all day. He can trick with his eyes closed. Doesn't matter. But he's also got the bow staff skills. You're definitely seeing this evolution of you can't just be good at just one thing. You got to bring all these forces together. It's kind of amazing how the competition scene just keeps evolving and growing off of each other, and it's pretty interesting. So I wanted to ask you, we kind of were just hitting on it, but if you could just kind of share your thoughts a little bit more, like what's the future? Where do you see the this is just an experiment. Maybe you haven't thought of this. Maybe it's impossible. It's just for fun. Someday, these kids that we're mentioning, they're now in the 13 or 14-year-old, 12, 11, they are going to grow up, and they're going to be teaching the next generation. What are they going to be teaching that next generation that's going to have to beat them?
Absolutely. So I think as you see generations go on, you see the extremely advanced moves of one generation become the basic tricks of the generation after that. And so I think that what you'll start to see is a very similar trend to what I see in teaching some of my seminars. We talk about basic tricks. Casey Marks was the first person to do a release in a bow form. Now release, in the 90s, that was huge. I think it was 95 was the first release that ever happened. And that was a huge deal. It was a huge deal to just let go of your bow.
Yeah.
And now people are throwing it, spinning 3 times and catching it, under their leg. So it's like, from generation to generation, you see the most advanced moves become some of the most basic moves. And so I think that, when you talk about some of my moves, like the Chris Angel, zero gravity variations, orbiters, different types of spinning releases, different variations of all the tricks that I've done throughout the years, I think that you will start to see those become not basic, but I think you'll start to see other tricks that are upgrades and that are variations will start to come out as these younger guys start to take that inspiration and be more creative with it. Again, that's how the sport progresses. You're going to start to see, things that 10 years ago we didn't think was humanly possible being done. And 10 years from now, we'll be seeing things that we didn't think would be possible right now being done.
Awesome. So, again, this is why I have Jackson on the show. I can throw any question at him, and the guy has the most articulate, well thought out answers. But yeah, it's just a growth, man. And you brought up an interesting point. The crazy tricks of today are the basics of tomorrow. It's pretty interesting. I mean, if we go from we can talk about tricking again and correlate it to tricking. I still remember the day when double cork was a theory, and then people started landing it, and wow. And now, as I said a couple years ago, I saw a kid that had never tricked before, and within 2 months, he was doing double corks. Just bananas. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm gonna take questions from the audience. Awesome. I asked you guys some or I posted up something before the show started just to get the ball rolling. But if you guys have any questions, drop them right in the feed. We're gonna be answering them right on the live show. The first question I have is from Chrissy Boyer, she's one of my wolf pack. She's always she's always tuning in.
I know Mrs. Boyer.
Yeah, thank you, Chrissy, always for tuning in. I love it. She asks, What fitness training regimen do you recommend?
So I definitely recommend cross training. I definitely recommend, time at the gym, cardio, calisthenics to keep your body right in addition to just martial arts training. I think that if you're going to be a top level competitor, it's necessary. In tournament season, I'll wake up before classes and go to the gym in the morning, then go to my classes, and then go and train my martial arts forms at night. So I think it's very important to always be trying to keep your body in the best shape possible. The best way to do cardio is with your forms, though. Break your forms down into sections. Run your sections back to back. Run full forms. Run them hard. Make yourself break a sweat. One of the best ways to get cardio is through section training, which is when you break your form up and train those sections over and over again. And that's something I try to instill in a lot of my students, too, is there's a difference between practicing and training. Practicing is when you go and you just kind of do a few of your moves and you go through your tricks and you make sure that you still know how to hold a bow staff. Training is when you go in with the sole intent of making yourself better. Training is when you break a sweat. It's when you show how much passion you have for what you're doing in that session, not just when you step on the mat to compete. So training is essential. Don't just practice, train.
Awesome philosophy. Sub question here. I just want to know, personal life of Jackson here. When you go to the gym, what are you doing? You lifting weights? You on a treadmill? You on a bike? Like, what's your regular routine?
I start on the treadmill. Break a sweat on the treadmill. It's a good, safe way to get your body warm before you start trying to do any weight training. And then for my weight training, it's primarily body weight stuff. I love push-ups and pull-ups. I think those are some of the best ways to build lean muscle that you need for doing bow staff, because you notice, the bulkier you get, the harder it is for your upper body to be flexible. And upper body flexibility is essential to doing bow staff, especially if you like to do more of the body rolls and manipulations like that. So I think that maintaining upper body flexibility is important. So I use a lot of body weight training, your push-ups, your pull-ups. But I'll also, do bench press and the lat pull-downs and some of your basic gym workouts as well. Definitely don't overdo it. As a bow staff practitioner, really as a weapons practitioner in general, you don't want to bulk. You want to build efficient, lean muscle that's going to be able to stay strong throughout the longevity of a form, and it's going to be able to give you power in your striking.
Tyler, Reed, you hear that? You got to stop with the biceps. Slow down, buddies. All right, cool. Chrissy's got a follow-up question. Chrissy gets 2 questions. This seems a lot easier. What's your favorite food?
Favorite food? I'm going to have to go... Chipotle is my favorite restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
So for favorite food, I'm going to have to go Chipotle Burrito Bowl.
Nice.
That's where it's at.
Good stuff. Every hyper shoot has to have some Chipotle involved.
And that's another important aspect of training, too. Like, if your favorite food's chocolate cake, you got to rethink that. Like, if you want to be a top-level competitor, then, you got to, you can have cheat days, but you got to make sure that your diet's right, and you got to be training to get your body right. And that's another thing that I feel like a lot of kids, I want to take it back and date myself a little bit. 10 years ago, when I really started getting serious in competing, when I was first becoming successful, I'm talking 2009, 2010, 2011. Now at tournaments, I see, these packs of kids that have to compete the next day or compete later that day that will just run around the hotel and play games and play tag with their friends.
Yeah.
In my generation, we did that on Saturday nights after the job was done.
Yeah.
Some people, of course, still did that before the tournament, but like me personally, when I was coming up, if it was a Thursday night before a tournament or a Friday night and I had runoffs the next day, at 11 or 12 o'clock, I was on an empty mat in the tournament room perfecting my craft because I wanted to put out the best possible product the next day. Yeah. I wasn't in my room asleep. I wasn't out with friends playing games. I was in the training area on the mat, making sure that my form was absolutely perfect for the next day. And I think that's something that no one really does anymore. Back then my dad didn't tell me this, but my dad tells me stories now of how I would be down there at 10, 11, midnight training, and parents of other top competitors would go up to my dad and be like, your son outworks everybody. It's no wonder he's successful because there's no one else in the tournament room right now.
Yeah.
He's the only one that's still here trying to get better.
Yeah.
Um, and for all the kids watching, that's what makes the difference, guys. It's when you care about what you're doing, when you really have a passion for what you're doing, you will stop at nothing to be as successful as you can possibly be.
Yeah.
You're not let things distract you, like going out to eat with friends or playing games or this and that. You're going to get to the tournament room early. You're going to get your body right. You're going to make sure that everything is ready for you to be able to compete the next day.
Awesome. Great advice. So, you guys, if you want to win, that's the mentality right there. The world champion is telling you right now exactly how he wins. It's because he focuses. He travels all the way across the country to go to this tournament, and it's not to mess around. It's to win. It's to present the very best routine, the very best performance you possibly can do. So awesome advice. Let's go to the next question. Alex Kirkland says, "Have you ever trained or competed with any other weapons besides a bow staff?"
I have actually. A lot of people don't know this, but I learned nunchucks, kamas, and sword all before I learned how to do bow staff. Bow staff was actually the last weapon that I learned, and that could be part of the reason I fell in love with it. I tried everything else, and then bow staff came, and it just fit. It was like peanut butter and jelly. Jackson Rudolph and bow staff, they just went together.
Yeah, awesome.
The other weapons, I love doing the other weapons. There actually is a division at the New England Open called Superforms, in which you spin a wheel and you've got to do whatever type of performance it lands on. In that division, I've done comma forms. I've won that event twice. One of those times I was doing a comma form in the finals of that event. That video is somewhere on YouTube if you guys want to try to search and find that. So yeah, I've done comma forms in that format. I've done nunchuck forms in that format. But never like an organized actual NASCA division have I competed with another weapon.
What was that division called again?
It's called Superforms.
I want to see if I can pop it up on the show.
Yeah, that 2012 is the comma form.
Let's check it out. I'll just play it on the show as we keep going. And I've worked with Jackson on a number of hyper shoots in the past, and he loves picking up all the other weapons and playing around with them. He's got combos. Yeah, you only see the final product, the polished thing that's up on the stage, but there's a lot. Jackson's got a lot going on. He's been doing this a long time, so let's see his combo form. This will be great.
I want to apologize beforehand for this comma form because some of the cuts were not as clean as I would like them to be. You notice I was a bit younger and hadn't trained commas very much at this point. So yeah, the cuts are not exemplary.
Okay,
so kids, if you're trying to get your cuts better, don't necessarily follow those. They weren't that bad, but they weren't pretty.
You know what? You're hanging in there. Bam! You're doing this on the fly. This is freestyle. This is not something you trained for. And
in a lot of these comic tricks, you're going to see some inspiration from Michaela Johnson here. You see gi that changed the game uniform. I was teammates with Michaela Johnson. That was actually what just happened. I'm pretty sure it was technically the first triple spin with a weapon done in competition. Was with a comma in that Superforms division. I decided to just go triple. So yeah, that happened.
That happened. History books.
Yeah. Also, I highly recommend if you guys can look up the audio to this video. Can they hear the audio in this video right now on the live stream?
I'll turn it up. I have it muted.
Yeah, if they have the audio, you can hear Dennis Brown, who's the promoter of the U.S. Capitol Classics. Awesome event. He's also an awesome on-site commentator for a lot of the nighttime shows. And some of Dennis Brown's commentary throughout this combo format this night show is awesome to listen to. But yeah, this division was always a lot of fun. It's fun to go up there and try something that you're not used to trying in front of people. It's always good to challenge yourself. As a martial artist, you want to try to embrace as many different aspects of the sport as you can. Whether it's studying a different traditional style, whether it's studying a different weapon. So it's a lot of fun to kind of, test your abilities and see what all you can learn with a division like Superforms. And again, it's the New England Open, promoted by Joe Greenhall. He's always super creative with the events that he does at his tournament. He runs a great event. Highly recommend that one as well.
So I want to make a note that you broke a live stream record just now. Playing Jackson Rudolph doing commas on the live show brought in more viewers than in the history of the show. So Good job, buddy. All right, let's go on to the next question here. We got to wrap things up. We're pretty much out of time here. People ask us all the time how to get on Competitive Edge. This is from Jeannie Jones. How do the tryouts work and things like that? So first of all, can you just introduce people, because not everybody knows what Competitive Edge is. So give a little rundown on what that is, and then how do you get on the team?
Competitive Edge is a team that is run by myself, Reed, and Cole Presley. We also recently brought Mackenzie Emery on as a coach of Team Competitive Edge. So we've got a really, really talented coaching staff, and really what our primary mission with Competitive Edge is to take competitors and make them the absolute best version of themselves that we can. We feel that with those 4 coaches, that with the experience that we have and the variety that we have among different weapons and different styles and different forms, we try to really spread that around to as much of the team as possible. So as far as getting onto the team, there's no formal tryout. It's all recruitment based. We watch at all the tournaments and we recruit based on what we see at NASCA and ProMac events. We do have a couple of requirements for that though. So typically the requirement is that you have to have competed on the NASCA circuit for at least a year. And then there's a minimum number of tournaments that you have to do each year once you're on the team. I believe it's 4 to 6, something like that. I've got to go back and look at
sure.
Our record and see what our history is with that. But there are standards for the team, and really when we're recruiting, we're looking for 2 things. We're not looking for if you're dominating your division or if you're winning every time. That's not who we're looking for. We're looking for people that are consistently improving, that show that they're working hard and are always improving with every performance that they do. Jeannie Jones, who asked the question, her boys are an excellent example of that. Ben and Winston Jones, both, they train their butts off. They work really hard. And since they've been on the team, I've seen extreme improvement in both of their performances. And I think I could say that with just about anybody on the team, whether it's Esteban Tremblay or Michaela Francisco or, Alex Miller, one of our younger guys, or our new pickups, Savino and Mateo, Rebecca Hammond, one of my students, Avery Presley, the youngest of the Presleys. The list goes on and on of these excellent team members that since they've gotten on the team have just made leaps and bounds in their improvement. And that's what we want to see. We want to see competitors that are consistently improving. I remember when in the Mike Welch show, we mentioned PJ Clark and how quickly he's improving. And so just, this huge list of names on the team, and they're all awesome competitors. We've got some guys that were with us from Success Martial Arts Center, the Presley School, Zach McBroom, Dawson Holt. We've got Duncan Lowry doing double bow. Try not to leave anybody out. Annika Sawyer, Mike Sawyer's daughter, the promoter of the U.S. Open. All of you guys know what the U.S. Open is. Annika Sawyer's made huge leaps and bounds with her comments since she's been on the team. I really hope I'm not leaving anybody out. I don't think I did. But the bottom line is that right. The bottom line is that we are trying to pick up the people that are improving the most and help them become the best version of themselves. And we also want to see the presence of a good role model. We want you to, on social media, you posting the right things. Are you ever negative on social media? We want to avoid anything like that. So we always want to pick up people that are going to grow and become good, positive role models and leaders of our team.
So again, this is a common topic that we talk about on the show is sponsorship and getting on teams and stuff. And we did have this conversation with Mike Welch, and same story. If you're trying to get on Team Infinity, you're trying to get on Competitive Edge, you're trying to get sponsored by Hyper. There's a basic formula that in theme that's running through this here. First of all, you gotta train regularly. You gotta show that you want it. You gotta go out there and compete. A lot of people have this backwards thought process of, well, I can't compete unless I'm on a team. But nobody ever starts on a team. You got to start. You got to start and show that you're worthy of getting on a team before you get on there. And typically, there is no tryouts. There's no checklist of you must do this and then you get on the team. It's kind of a, do you work with us? And you got to be a decent person. You got to martial arts is all about leadership. It's all about inspiring the next generation. And if you want to be on a team where people are going to look up to you because now you're a hotshot, well. You need to represent yourself properly. So there you go. If you want to be on Competitive Edge, You got to
I want to
put
make
in the
I want to
work.
make one more I want to make one more comment. I know we're over time, and I apologize for
No, it's
that.
all
But
good.
I think this is very important, and I want to take it back, 10 years to, when I was really starting to get good at competing. And let's go a little bit before that to, before I was good. You
Hmm.
know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, it was a huge deal to get on a team, and not everybody was on a team.
Yeah.
So, like, I remember when I started competing, I never won a division in 9 and under. In the 9 and under age group, I never won a division. I wore a blank black uniform throughout that entire time period, right? And today I think the culture is so different because now it seems like there's 10 million teams out there, and everybody gets on a team in some way, shape, or form. But back then, that's not how it was. And if you're not on a team and you want to get on a team, or let's say you're on a regional team and you want to make it to a national or a world level team, right? Um, you need to take up the mentality that we had 10 to 15 years ago. And that mentality was that we were going to put our heart and soul into everything when we had a blank gi on so that we could get to where we wanted to be. From day one, from the time that I started competing, my goal was to be on Team Paul Mitchell. That was the only thing that I ever wanted. My first U.S. Open was in 2006. I sat in the back row of that night show next to my dad, and we were watching John Sue. We were watching Matt Emig. We were watching Lauren Carney. We were watching all of these great Paul Mitchell competitors. And, this is 2006. I was really bad. I was not a good competitor. I look up at my dad and I tell him, one day I'm going to be on that stage and I'm going to represent that team and I'm going to win for that team. And so from the first U.S. Open I ever went to, that is exactly what I wanted to do. And so I still remember, I was in maybe third or fourth grade. I was in elementary school. And I remember my parents, no, it couldn't have been elementary school, maybe middle school. Anyway, so in that fourth to sixth grade period, I wasn't on a team yet, and Lauren started the Premier Martial Arts National Karate Team. And I remember I was in school, and my parents came and took me out of class to tell me that I had gotten on a team, that Lauren had started a team, and that I was a part of it. And that was one of the best days of my life. I would, it's probably in the top 5 with one of the best days of my life being the day that I got on Paul Mitchell. And so the culture back then was to be 100% loyal to where you wanted to be. Mm. And so when you had that blank gi, you worked your tail off to try to get noticed by those teams. And I think that culture is slightly different. I see it a lot nowadays where a kid that's been competing on the circuit for maybe 6 months will lose, and then, they'll be like, oh, it was the politics, or, that person won because they were seated higher. Back when I started doing this, we didn't shuffle the seeds. There wasn't a shuffle. They shuffled everybody that wasn't seeded, and then it was fourth, third, second, first seed, and that was the order that it went, and the first seed went last every single time. And it was really hard to upset that first seed, let alone being a non-seeded competitor and trying to get into the fourth place spot. And that's how you kind of had to work your way up. You had to say, okay, I'm going to beat the fourth place guy today. I'm going to beat the third place guy the next tournament. I'm going to beat the second place guy, then I'm going to beat the first place guy. Yeah. And you had to work your way up that way. Yeah. And so back then, there wasn't this, oh, well, the judges did this, or the judges did that, or, oh, this was politics. It was cut and dry. If you don't win, you go back and you work harder. The first NASCA tournament I ever competed in was the Bluegrass Nationals, and I got dead last. I got 7th place. There were 7 kids in the division. I got 7th. And I didn't go back to my dad and cry about it. I went back to my dad, and I was like, all right, work harder. I need to do better. I want to come back again, and I want to do better than how I just did. And I think that's very important to getting on a team and to being successful in the long term, is making sure that you are always trying to perfect your craft and that you are putting every bit of passion that you have into training, and you're loyal to your goals. I think a lot of people don't stay loyal to what their goals are, that, other things pop up and they start approaching new things. No, when you have a goal, when you start this journey as a competitive martial artist, you decide what you want and you go out and you get what you want. Mm. From day one, I said, Paul Mitchell, U.S. Open. That's what I wanted. Mm. And now I have Paul Mitchell. I've won 7 individual U.S. Opens, and I've got Warrior Cups and Diamond Rings to boot.
Yeah.
So it's the whole, if you shoot for the moon, you'll land amongst the stars type thing. If you have one goal and you put all of your passion, all of your effort, and all of your energy into that one goal, when you get there, you'll notice that a lot of other benefits will fall into place as well.
Sure.
So don't get caught up in, well, the judging is based on too much tricking and not enough weapons, or the judging is based on, it's not the judge's fault, right? Most of the time, the judges are going to get it right. And if they don't, then they don't, and that happens. That's human error, right? I've never blamed a judge for a poor performance in a competition. It's always something that I did that judge didn't like. So I need to go back and try to make myself better and try to improve so that everybody likes the product that I put out and they can see how much passion I put into it.
Awesome. And I have so much that I could respond to and commentate on that, but I think that's a great way to end the show today. Great inspirational words of wisdom. Hopefully somebody can re-edit this Live with Wolfman, and you take that part, put some motivational music behind it. It'll be a viral video. It'll be one of those viral motivational quotes. Gets on Goalcast or something. But with that, Jackson, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing your wisdom, sharing your thoughts, just joining us. It was really great. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I love being on the show. This was an awesome time. I'd love to do it again sometime in the future. Thank you to all of you guys that tuned in. I appreciate you guys supporting Jacob. I love what he's doing here, trying to grow our sport and trying to, just get more conversation out there. I think it's awesome. So thank you guys for all tuning in. Power to the Wolf Pack. Good job. And go ahead and keep putting comments down in the sections below. I'm going to take a look at the comments throughout the day. If you guys have any other questions that I wasn't able to address in this live stream, feel free to start discussions about it in the comments down below. Share it, see what other people think, and I'd be more than happy to answer some questions in the comment section later on as well.
Awesome. And last thing, real quick about Jackson, if you are a school owner or an instructor, I highly recommend having Jackson out at your school. And he does seminars all the time. I think you just hit him up on Facebook with a private message and he'll explain his openings and all that stuff. Highly recommended. If you are a competitor, I highly recommend learning from Jackson as well. He does offer private Skype lessons here and there. I'm not going to do too much of a plug on that. Instead, what I'd rather say is go download the Hyper Training Lab app and access all of his content. Learn his forms, learn his strikes, because he teaches a heck of a lot. And there's a lot of resources out there. You can also get it on DVD as well. But enough of that. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Jackson. I am definitely going to invite you back on the show. It's always great to have a conversation with you and your role model. Stanford, sophomore year at Stanford. He goes to Stanford and he's a world champion. How much more of like a superhero does it get? Been a great week on the show. Had a lot of amazing guests. I got some guests lined up next week. I don't have every day filled up yet, so some of it's going to be a mystery, but just as a heads up, next week on the show, we got Alan Belcher. He's a former UFC contender. He's also a business guy. He runs a school. He does a lot of education. He's a Hyper Fight Club trainer. So I'm going to be picking his brain about anything under the sun. I'm probably going to pick his brain about UFC. We also have Emily Cooper lined up, the creator of SportMartialArts.com. Super stoked about that. I also have the creator of Adrenaline on the show. McGuire Kane will be joining us. And finally, I am booking Mr. Andy Lee on the show, who is one of the creators of Martial Club, one of the most popular martial arts YouTube channels out there. He recently did a project with Jackie Chan. He's run Red Bull Kicking It. He's been featured on the show numerous times. So super excited to have all of those guests lined up. And every Monday through Friday, an hour-long show. That's what we do. This is Live with Wolfman. Tune in for the next one. If you're watching the replay, hit that notification thing. Join the Live with Wolfman Facebook group so you can see previous episodes. I've said my piece. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a good Halloween weekend. Do something scary. Dress up as a Wolfman. I got a phone call, so I got to go. All right, guys. See you in the next one.